Habitats of the Bahamas. Marine environments cover the greatest area of the Bahamas and are linked in both the flow of energy and matter through biological and ecological cycles which provide jobs, food, and recreational services. Wetlands comprise 40% of the land area in the Bahamas and range from narrow fringes of trees along the coast to extensive shallow wetlands and to large tidal creek systems. There are both inland and coastal wetlands that contain an estimated 4,286 kilometers of mangrove forest and other wetland habitats. Pine forests comprise 23% of the terrestrial ecosystems. There are no rivers or major freshwater lakes in the country, but several islands contain large brackish lakes and many tidal creeks.
Population estimates of the Bahamas range from 275,000 to 325,000, and about 20 to 25% of this population is made up of Haitian refugees. About 85% of people from the Bahamas are of African ancestry, and the remainder is mainly of European descent. About 60% of the population is urban, and this number is rapidly growing as well. As for politics in the Bahamas, there are high homicide rates and harsh immigration laws that are frequently carried out without following the proper procedures. In addition, government corruption is a very serious issue.
Culture of the Bahamas. The Bahamas is a blend of its African heritage and British structure inherited from its history as a British colony. While the Bahamian spirit is African, many of its laws and traditions are British, such as driving on the left side of the road, the Westminster parliamentary system, and even drinking tea as a daily routine. Most of the Bahamas population is of West African descent, whose ancestors were forced into slavery. Bahamians are deeply religious, and Christianity is the predominant religion practiced in the country. English is the official language of the Bahamas, with a local dialect called Bahamianese or Bahamian dialect, being spoken colloquially. The Bahamas has three indigenous forms of music and dance: goombay, rake and scrape, and junkanoo.
For the business sector of the Bahamas, they import 90% of their food at $1 billion annually. The hotels and resorts export 60% of their food and beverages from the U.S. They are actively developing legislation to require foreign investors to purchase 40% of their products locally. Leading developments include hurricane-sustainable construction materials such as the Deltec home design seen in the middle. It also includes utility-scale renewable energies, which includes solar, wind, and biomass, which are their current sources, and efficiency products. Along with that, tourism accounts for 70% of the GDP and half of all jobs, along with related financial services. Second, they're the second largest marketer of processed foods in the Caribbean, and unemployment accounts for about 20 to 25% of their population. An important location for major U.S. brands in the Caribbean also includes Freeport, which is a free trade zone. For the agricultural sector of the Bahamas, the farming is a household practice for residents. Only 1% of the land is cultivated. There's a government reserve of 450,000 acres for farming, along with 20,000 acres for fruit farming. Exported products are by greatest value produced, and those include, with the most being forest products for $104.91 million, seeing a 104% increase in the last 10 years. Next is poultry, which has seen a 22% increase in the past 10 years. Baked goods for $29 million has seen a 1% increase over the last 10 years. Dairy has seen a 10% increase over the last 10 years. Beef has a $22.65 million, seeing a 3% increase over the last 10 years. Pork has seen a 30% increase Juice is 13.93 million and has seen a 38% increase in the last 10 years. Food prep is 13.65 million, seeing an 83% increase. Vegetables are at 13.3 million, seeing an 81% increase in the past 10 years. And fruit is 12.3 million, seeing a 59% increase in the last 10 years.
During the hot season in the Bahamas, which is in June through December, the average daily high temperature is 88 degrees Fahrenheit, and the average daily low temperature is 78 degrees Fahrenheit. During the cold season in the Bahamas, which is through December and March, the average daily high temperature is 80 degrees Fahrenheit, and the average daily low temperature is 71 degrees Fahrenheit. For rainfall, the monthly average rainfall in the Bahamas is about 1 inch per month, with most rain hitting the northern islands and less rain hitting the southern islands. In October, the month with the most rainfall, there is an average rainfall of 1.9 inches a month. In December, the month with the least rain on average, there is an average rainfall of 0.4 inches. Current climate issues. During a 100-year period, the Bahamas were hit with 43 hurricanes and/or cyclones. This is an average of 4.3 hurricanes per decade. Since 80% of the Bahamas land surface lies about 1 meter or less above sea level, this makes it one of the most vulnerable countries to sea level rise. This low land surface also makes the Bahamas extremely susceptible to major flooding during hurricane season, which is from June through November. Due to the dry and alkaline nature of Bahamian soil, alkaline soils limit soil's ability to absorb water. This makes the country vulnerable to increasing temperatures and decreasing precipitation. Since the weather of the Bahamas is greatly influenced by ENSO events, the possibility of droughts could increase if El Niño events become more frequent.
Some of the current solutions to climate change in the Bahamas includes helping to develop web tools to monitor the impact of sea level rise, revising building codes in preparation for intense weather, transitioning to renewable energy, and they are currently verifying mangroves and seagrass meadows to begin to sell carbon credits.
Future climate issues for the Bahamas consist of the same issues that were previously discussed in the current issues the nation is facing, and then some, and of course on a higher end of the spectrum. Now, in terms of the future, we're referring to the years of 2030 to 2050 for most of these issues. The Bahamas is predicted to experience increased intensity and frequency of natural disasters, such as more intense and longer drought periods, bushfires, and high-intensity hurricanes. The country's prime minister warns that within 15 to 20 years, what we now believe to be unusual may become the usual, in which he's referring to Category 5 hurricanes hitting the nation, like the one of Hurricane Dorian in 2019. Sea level rise is expected to rise up to 1.5 meters, which is not good given the fact that more than 80% of the land surface and most settlements are only a meter or less above mean sea level right now. This, coupled with increasingly intense precipitation events and tropical storms, are in turn expected to increase the frequency and intensity of flooding in the Bahamas. Lastly, the country is projected to experience warming of mean annual temperature between 0.8 degrees Celsius to 1.9 degrees Celsius by the 2050s and 1 degree Celsius to 3.2 degrees Celsius by the 2080s. Projected changes in mean annual precipitation range from 20 millimeters per month to 15 millimeters per month across all high, medium, and low emission scenarios. So, with all that, we present the Bahamas Disaster Vulnerability Reduction Project. The project is rooted in the concept of nature-based solution management. For highly threatened coastal regions, such as that of the Bahamas, the use of nature-based solutions can help in the way to stabilize shorelines, lessen the effects of flooding and erosion, and preserve fisheries. There are 3 main objectives to this project. The first objective is to establish as well as improve upon coastal protection measures. Currently, the Bahamas has approximately 1% of its total national territory under some sort of protection. Assessments and studies on vulnerable sectors and communities need to be performed and made available to decision makers to implement adaptation and retreat policies. Objective number 2 is to preserve as well as restore essential natural habitats such as the mangrove forest and the wetlands. And the last objective, but certainly just as important, will be to implement a coral reef monitoring system. These 3 objectives intertwine with one another to help reduce the country's vulnerability to future climate extremes in the following way. Coral reefs reduce storm surges by absorbing wave energy. Mangrove swamps and seagrass beds serve as a buffer for the waves that do reach the reefs, and they help hold sand and debris to help stop shoreline erosion. These environmental fortifications of the island will gradually reduce the storm's intensity by the time it reaches homes and streets. These natural defenses serve as a regional source of food as well as financial stability for the country. Fisheries are abundant in healthy coastal ecosystems, which is a resource that is crucial following a storm when food sources are limited. Through substantial businesses like tourism and commercial fishing, thriving maritime areas help communities regain financial footing. Also, more efforts to grow and harvest their own food will in turn reduce dependency on imports, which helps curb a global root cause of sea level rising, ocean and atmosphere polluting ships. The project will be sponsored by the Green Climate Fund.